Amazed at what I am. I say what I think, that the company stinks. Yes, I'm a union man.
I got a microphone, yeah.
When we meet in the local hall.
In fact, I'm recovering from an attack, you might know. Thanks very much for coming. I know that Scotland are playing Germany on the television right now. I can't tell you the score, but I can certainly predict the result. I was in Germany in 1974 in Frankfurt with the Tartan Army. Thousands and thousands of us when we last had an international football team. So let's hope the team can acquit themselves well, at least this evening. The air is full of clucking, people counting their chickens before they're hatched, people getting ready to lay eggs. But me and Brian are just continuing on. We're keeping calm and carrying on. Because our message, which we've taken all over Scotland, tomorrow night we're in Paisley, Friday we're in Edinburgh at the Usher Hall, the following Monday in Glasgow at the Royal Concert Hall. We've done tens of these meetings, thousands of people have come to engage with us. And what I'm going to do is speak for a bit, then invite Brian to do the same, and then we'll go straight into questions and answers. Any questions that you've got will be dealt with to the best of our ability. We are unequivocal. We think that a yes vote on the 18th of September will be bad for working people in Scotland and bad for working people elsewhere in Britain. And therefore we're against it, because we only care about working people. We don't view things through the prism of nationality. We have nothing in common with the bigoted, Bible-belting, homophobic billionaire Brian Souter that's paying for all this independence campaign. Even though he's Scottish, we have absolutely nothing in common with him. When the scabs in the Yule and Dodds lorries were breaking the miners' strike in Ayrshire, they were Scottish. Scottish company, Scottish drivers. We had nothing in common with them. Our interests lay then with other miners and mining communities in the rest of this small island of English-speaking people. And that's how we view the world, through the prism of class, not where you were born on the rock, but what you do on the rock, and what your relationship to wealth and power on that rock is. This is a fundamental difference between us and the SNP, whose question you'll be voting on the 18th, whose white paper is the proposition that's before you. We said that when the SNP was effectively a tartan Tory party based in Perthshire and Angus and Banff and Buchan. We say it now, that they're pretending, at least in places like Irvine, to be something different. We said it when the SNP, 11 MPs, some of you old enough to remember it, staggered out of the House of Commons bars, swaying in the non-existent breeze, because for them every night was Burns night, into the lobby behind Margaret Thatcher to bring down the Labour government of James Callaghan and usher in the Thatcher era, which utterly devastated Scotland. Nobody in this room, in any party, hates the Tories more than me. Nobody in this room, of any party, hates nuclear weapons more than me. I'm the only man ever who gave an interview upside down to the BBC whilst being carried away to Greenock Jail from the Faslane nuclear weapons base by 4 of Strathclyde Police's finest. Nobody in here hates imperialism and colonialism more than me. I can show you my scars sustained over many decades. But I'm here to say that the proposition that's before you of so-called independence whilst using another country's currency, controlled by that other country, controlled by the government, which, if you take the Scottish MPs out of Westminster, will be a Tory government as far as anyone can possibly see, that would actually make Scotland a colony, which at this moment it is not. Scotland is not a colony, has never been a colony. Scotland and England together colonized the world. But we would be a colony if we had so-called independence whilst using somebody else's currency. Like Panama, which uses the US dollar and has no independence at all. I'm here to say that what will happen if there's a yes vote on the 18th of September and Alex Salmond succeeds in fixing profit tax, company tax, corporation tax, as it's now known, at 3% below the existing corporation tax, whatever it is in the other parts of this country, can only mean a race to the bottom. You can do the maths. If Alex Salmond cuts profit tax by 3%, the right-wing Tory government at Westminster will cut it by 4%. Salmond will have to cut it by 5%. The Tories will cut it by 6%. Before you know it, we'll be paying the companies to come here rather than taxing them on the profits that they make here. Does anybody really believe that a right-wing Tory government in Westminster will not create a Thatcherite free enterprise environment with low taxes, low regulation, low public expenditure in order to compete? They with 60 million, we with 5 million for available inward investment. Of course they will. And I don't know about you, but I never met a businessman that preferred to go to a place where taxes were higher, regulation stricter, and public expenditure in the state funded by them in part was greater. So Salmond will have to do the same. And it will be Salmond. Don't come here and tell me that you're not SNP but you're voting yes. That's a distinction without a difference. If you vote yes, you are voting for the SNP's only principal flagship policy. And the SNP will be in power for, in some cases, the rest of your life, and for a lot of your life in every case. Why do I say that? Because there is no recorded example where the party that brought about a breakaway from another country, an independence movement, did not get elected to run the state afterwards. No recorded example. Eamon de Valera was the president of Ireland until he was 91 years old. Now Alex Salmond's ate a lot of pies. I'm not sure if he'll make it to 91. But after him comes the deluge. What's her name? Nicola Sturgeon. So make up your mind, because that's what you're going to get. If that's what you want, that's the kind of country you want, I think you'll have a long time to rue that mistake. In any case, there is no chance whatsoever. Luckily, I say, luckily, there is no chance whatsoever that what remains of the United Kingdom will allow Scotland to go on using the pound in a currency union. It's simple, really. You don't have to be Joseph Stiglitz, Alex Salmond's chief economic advisor, to work it out. I don't know if any of you have ever been divorced. I have, more than once actually. It's never, ever, ever nice. You can negotiate about the CDs, the DVDs, the dug, the car, maybe even the house. But the one thing that never, ever, ever happens is that you say to the person walking out the door when you're begging them to stay, by the way, you can continue to use our joint credit card. That never, ever happens, and it will not happen now. So you're the only people in history being asked to vote to set up a state that has no currency. It will not be the pound. Thankfully, I say. It will not be the euro, which actually, logically, it should have been. How's the euro going? Which is why, of course, he didn't propose it. So the only alternative left then is to create your own currency, without any foreign currency reserves, and to which no one will lend the money that's needed to back it up, because it has no reserves. And if it reneges on the debt, as Alex Salmond has threatened that it would do, then nobody will lend money in any circumstances. It might not be a new currency, it might be an old one, the groat. Anybody fancy getting their pension in groats? And what's the groat going to be worth? How can anybody tell what it's going to be worth? As it's based on the most price unstable commodity on the earth. In my lifetime, oil has been as low as $12 a barrel and as high as $156 a barrel. I don't know what it is today. What I do know is that nobody knows what it'll be tomorrow, or next year, or in 10 years. In any case, it's not only going to be based, this growth, on a price unstable commodity, it's going to be based on a price unstable commodity that is fast running out. Syrian wood, who's made a £1 billion fortune in the North Sea oil business, knows rather more about oil than most people in the world, told us just a few weeks ago that there will be a sharp reduction in production of North Sea oil in 21 years precisely, and that the oil will be finished in 30 years. Now, I'll not be here in 30 years. I'd pay him to say that. He says it every night. I'll not be here in 30 years. But by the grace of God, I have many children. And all of them, I hope, will be here in 30 years. And you've got children. And they've got children, or will have, in the next 30 years. You'd have to be very foolish to agree to set up a state based on a disappearing, fast disappearing commodity whose price cannot be predicted from one day to the next. The last thing I'm going to say before I bring in Brian is this. I hear a lot of people saying that there are differences too great between Scottish and English people for us to go on living in a single state as we've done for 300 years. I don't believe that. I'm going to tell you, I was recently in Oban. There are more differences between the people in Oban and the people in Irvine than there are between the people in Irvine and the people in Liverpool or in Newcastle. There are differences, of course, everywhere. There are differences in any union, any marriage. I prefer the square sausage. My wife prefers links. Some people prefer Andy Stewart, some people prefer Adele or the Alexander brothers. Some people like to eat some real, some people like to jive. None of these are differences that require or justify the costs and the risks and the attendant upheaval of separation and divorce. That's my view. You might well take a different one. People in Oban told me that shinty was our national game. It's not. It's their national game. It's not mine. And I dare say it isn't yours either. A lot of people in Oban spoke to me in Gaelic, and very beautiful it is too. And I fully support all means to support the ancient Gaelic culture in our country. But it's not my language. And I dare say it isn't yours. My language is the same as the people in Newcastle, same as the people in Liverpool, just a different accent, but I've got a different accent to you. That's not a difference that requires or justifies a divorce. That's my view. We can argue about it. I think Scotland has the best of both worlds, and I fought for it, along with Brian Donoghue. Fought for it long and hard, for home rule, a powerful Scottish Parliament, which, yes, could become in the next few days more powerful still, but without breaking up the country, keeping the Tories in power forever in Westminster, and leading a race to the bottom for working people on both sides of the then existing border. That's my opening case. Let me call on my friend for almost 40 years, one of the few men deserving of the title, Right Honourable Brian Wilson. Brian.
Well, thanks very much, George. Nice to be back in North Ayrshire. I think the last time I came up, the only time I was at the Magnum for something political, I think, was always for election counts, and I always won, so I hope that's a good omen. We've been doing a lot of these meetings, and we're getting to near the end of the process now, but the arguments are essentially the same, but maybe they're becoming more crystallised, maybe they're becoming more urgent, but there's certainly arguments that have to be made. But let's take it in, knocking down three kind of myths that are used against our side of the argument. The first is that there's something wrong with it. I spoke at the beginning of last week with Ruth Davidson, or with a Tory in the Laird. I've spoken with George in many platforms. I've spoken with Liberals, with this, that one, and so you say, but you shouldn't be speaking with this one, and you shouldn't be mixing with that one. Well, it's the nature of a referendum campaign where you only have two possible answers. There's only two options in the ballot paper, and in order to reach each of these options from either side, then people with widely disparate views on everything else under the sun will come together in order to reach that conclusion from very different directions. And then the same as that's true in the no side, but it's also true in the yes side. The difference is that when this is over, the people who've come together from different directions on the no side of the argument, we will go our separate ways. And we'll dispute what I believe to be the things that matter in politics, the social and the economic issues, the arguments between those who have and those who have not, the arguments of how wealth is distributed, how power is distributed. These are the things that brought me into politics, and these are the issues through which change is achieved. The difference is on the other side of the argument is that they will stay together. They'll stay together, left, right, centre, everything under the sun, bound together by the cord of nationalism. And their politics are not about the dynamic of social and economic issues of who has and who has not. Their politics are about the politics of identity. And what they stand for is Scotland as an entity, and the problem for them is not people within Scotland or economic interests within Scotland. For them, it's people, it's England, it's Westminster, whatever euphemism is applied to it, but always there is someone else to blame. And that way, things never go forward. Because what you need is a dynamic of change, a dynamic of conflict in the nicest possible way on social and economic things. And sometimes the pendulum goes with you. Sometimes you have governments of the left and then you lose, and sometimes there's governments of the right. But when there is governments of the left, that is when progress is made. Every significant progress that has been made, that has given me my life opportunities, has been made through the times when there have been Labour governments. But I'm not parochial, I'm not petty in this, and I don't say that nobody else has done good things. And if they do good things, then again, the electoral will makes these things impossible to shift. But that way we go forward, and we have done. But the great thing about that is that we've gone forward in all these advances within the United Kingdom, bringing benefit to exactly the same people with exactly the same interests in every corner of the United Kingdom. And if we'd been doing it within Scotland alone, we would have not made these achievements. Because don't ever believe that Scotland is, or ever has been, a land in which there is no vested interests which are opposed to the kind of social progress that I'm talking about. And that gets me on to the second sort of myth of this thing. And that is when they talk about what we say is negative. Well, in a way, if you're arguing for no, no is a negative word. But this is far too important for a word game about positives and negatives. There's things that I'm incredibly positive about. I'm incredibly positive about the National Health Service. I'm incredibly positive about the welfare state. I'm incredibly positive about the great slum clearance programs of the 50s and 60s. I'm incredibly positive about comprehensive education and the fact that I and many, many people of my generation were the first in the history of our families who had the opportunity to go to university and to pass the same kind of prospects on to our children. And every one of these things, which has given me my life opportunities, and has given millions of people their life opportunities, were achieved on the basis of unity, not on the basis of division. And they could not have been achieved. They could not have been achieved if we were not working with people with the same interests and the same ambitions for their children's futures in other parts of the United Kingdom. We could never have won these battles on our own, and we could never have delivered the great outcomes on our own. And now we see nationalism just taking these things as if they had never been struggled for, had never been fought for, they were just givens that were dropped from heaven upon Scotland and say, well, we'll claim them, and then we will actually denigrate the people who delivered them, we'll denigrate the forces of that delivered them, we'll denigrate the people who actually struggled and had the commitment in order to build a very, very decent society for the vast majority of people in this country. So I'm incredibly positive about all these things. I'm so positive that I'm here talking about them and instead of watching the football at home, and that I'm here doing this because I'm not like George. Neither of us are practicing politicians in Scotland now for different reasons. But I've never been so motivated by anything than the sheer folly of what we appear to be very close to buying into in Scotland. And we'll come into some of the practical implications of that. But to throw away so much in return for so little, and for return for absolutely nothing on which any guarantees or assurances can be given, it just seems to me madness. And I'll tell you what I'm very negative about. I can think of nothing more negative in the second decade of the 21st century than to start creating borders within a small country. Are there not enough problems in the world? Are there not enough divisions in the world? Do we in Scotland have to instigate an entirely new one? And we could stick out our chests and say we'd be European leaders. Nobody else has done it. Nobody else has broken up a developed Western European state since the Second World War. We would be the first, but we wouldn't be the last. And that's why so many people are watching this in Europe. Not because we are beacons of progress, but because we are in danger of becoming beacons of reaction. Because all around Europe, there are separatist movements just waiting for the signal. And if we give that signal, then others will follow. In Italy, in Spain, in Belgium, half the countries of the European Union have secessionist movements. And that takes you on to another point. That is why there will be no easy access. There may be eventual access, but there will certainly be no easy access for Scotland back into the European Union. Because no government, which has its own secessionist movements, is going to give the signal to these secessionist movements that you can walk out of a state one day and then you can walk back into the European Union the next day on the same terms that you left. It isn't going to happen. And that is the kind of practical logic which has been ignored in this debate, because the implication of that for jobs, for benefits, for all the delegations that we have at present within the European Union are absolutely enormous. And the third myth that I want to take is this thing about you vote for Scottish nationalism on the 18th of September and you end up with a Labour government, a permanent Labour government or a government of the left. It is utter and complete nonsense. And there's reason particular in Irvine that you should maybe appreciate, but the sort of siren voices who tell you now that really what they're doing is breaking up Britain in order to create a Labour government in Scotland are exactly the people who have fought Labour governments tooth and nail all of their political lives and who hate above all the Labour Party and the Labour Party stands for. It isn't going to happen. And as George says, what you happen if you vote nationalist, you get nationalist. And nationalist governments are very difficult to get rid of. Because come the standard bearers, they are the ones who have delivered separation in the first place. And what you'll get is what you've got now. I always say this, why does anybody look at the crystal ball when they can read the book? The Nationalists have had 7 years at Holyrood to deliver anything of a redistributionist nature. If they care so much about poverty, if they care so much about social justice, and I ask them if there's any in tonight, can I give the challenge every night? I've never yet had the answer. Name me one redistributionist piece of legislation that they've introduced since 2007 into Holyrood, and nobody can give me the answer to that because not one has existed. Everything has been about keeping the centre ground happy, keeping the middle classes happy, and all these free things which poor people get anyway, but the only beneficiaries of that are the people at the top end of the income state scale, and the same with social council tax fees, which is the most regressive piece of legislation of all. So you're not going to get any left government in Scotland any more than you have at the present time. You'll get the rhetoric of left and the actions of right, which again is the classic nationalist formula. But what you will get is the far greater likelihood of permanent right-wing government in the rest of what is currently the United Kingdom. And that's not, they always come along with a little bit of paper to tell why it's not true, but anyone with common sense knows that it is true. That every time there's been a Labour government in the UK, it's either followed a brief period of minority government in which the Scottish Labour votes were essential, or it's been brought about by Scottish Labour votes. But you greatly decrease the prospect of any Labour government or radical government of any kind in what's left of the UK if you take Scotland out of that equation. So what we're actually been doing is being asked to turn our backs on all the people who have stood with us for so long on so many of these issues. Go away, you're no longer of interest to us because we are Scottish and we're going to carve out some little separate radical state. It's all nonsense and it's all pretty unpleasant in my view. But critically, what it is going to do, it is going to create that we, and this is the bit that is madness, this is pure madness, that in the name of independence, we are demanding, Scotland is demanding that it should have the right to share a currency with a foreign government, and it is that foreign government which will set the interest rates, will set the financial parameters, will eventually dictate everything that goes on within Scotland. But we would have no say in the decision-making on how that currency, how these absolutely critical financial decisions were made. What kind of independence is it when we opt out of our role in these major monetary decisions and leave them to the foreign state that we've just walked out on? What kind of independence or what kind of logic is there? There won't be a currency union. I read, and I don't know why, but I read in the polls today that there's more people in Scotland still think we will have a currency union and we won't have a currency union. We will not have a currency union. The arguments against it are irrefutable. We'd all night, we could go through them. But even if we did, it would not be in Scotland's interest, and secondly, it wouldn't last for more than weeks or months. It is a nonsense to talk about a currency union which does not have a political union to support it. And once the cold light of day dawned, and we did not have a currency union, and it seems that the plan Bs, it seems the favoured one now is to carry on using the pound without a currency union. That would be catastrophic for jobs and investment in this country and for public services. Each of the three plan Bs requires us to build foreign currency exchanges in order to support this currency which would no longer have a central bank. I listened last week to a guy, one of the world's major leading currency export experts at Glasgow University, whose estimate is that the foreign reserves we require would be £40 billion. Well, it might be 30 or it might be 50, but it would be on a scale that could only be achieved by two ways. One by cuts in services, or the other by increases in taxes. And his words, not mine, were that the kind of austerity that scenario would create would mean that what we are seeing now is as nothing. We are being sold a complete pup on this, as if we were choosing between a status quo which we're supposed to revival and say is awful and is, you know, that there's no good in what we have just now, and then some bright new future. There is a third option, which isn't